Hey there everybody at Mission Control, TheRealMartian here. Well, today I'm going to do a Q&A session. It's been a while since we did our last one, and there's been tons of really good questions coming through over the comment board. So thank you all for all your constructive comments that have been there, and lots of good questions. So today I just grabbed some of them. I apologize. There's so many comments on there, it's hard to filter them all out and get all the questions, but I'm going to try to do my best to go back as far as I can and get some really good ones that a lot of you have asked, kind of repetitive type of questions. Lots of people have been very interested in the same things. So let's go ahead and get started. Curtis Graham asks, why did you put the solar system so far away from the meter? And Curtis, that's a great question. We spent a lot of time thinking about that one too. The placement of the solar panels in such a location that first, it wasn't an eyesore, and second, it had maximum solar potential, meaning there's nothing there in its way. There's basically two locations where we could have done this, and we ended up going with the place where it's at right now. The second location was almost just as far away as far as, how do I say it, like, it was physically closer, but the way that you would have had to run the wires would have been almost exactly the same distance. Otherwise, we would have been chopping up the yard, chopping up sprinkler systems, going under other wires, telephone cables, going through, digging around. It would have been a really, really big challenge. And in the end, you're not really saving too much. So we chose to go with this location. It has maximum solar potential. There's nothing blocking it. It is kind of nice having everything out here close to each other. And what that meant, what it ended up costing us, is we had to spend more on wire so that we could actually have, I think it's 4-aught AWG wire. It's like the size of my thumb. Wire, so that line losses and all that were taken into effect. But that cost us a pretty penny to deal with that, but I really like where it ended up being. I like having everything right out here at the same site, and it's going to be really easy for us to duplicate it. Right now I'm looking to the east, and we're going to put, HAB 2 over there and another solar system. So all the wires and everything we put in the ground will actually work for HAB 2 as well. So it's a good question. It's another one of those ones where you could have put it in different places. It would have taken up more pasture land, but we chose to go with it where it's at. Texas Jerry asks, have you thought about using a mortar mixer to grind and mix prior to pumping? And this, for those that are new to the channel, we did a flashback series where I'm going back and talking about all the things that we built. I encourage you to go back and look at those. This one has to do with the digester system that we put in place, which takes organic matter such as horse manure, cow manure, table scraps, etc., and breaks it into methane and what is called digestate. And this question has to do with the problem that I had where manure is floating. The loading of the digester is a problem because the material that we're putting in is buoyant, meaning it floats. So basically you have this big tube, 2-foot diameter tube, and as I throw manure into it, the manure is just boom, boom, and it's filled with water, sorry. So you dump the manure into it, and it's just coming back up. So it initially goes down, and then just comes back up. And as you put more and more manure in, it just goes down this tube until eventually it blocks this 6-inch input. And what I've done is I've put actually a pumping system in, what we call the horse toilet. Again, that's documented in one of my previous videos. And what's supposed to happen is it gets ground up, and then there's now a 2-inch pipe that goes down all the way into the digester that sends this slurry of material down into the digester. And that's the theory anyway. And we did get a pump, and we did turn it on, and it did all work. But the challenge is that loading the horse toilet requires some actual additional pre-processing because of straw. So the material that we're loading is clumpy. It's mixed horse manure, cow manure, hay from just left over when the animals are eating. It just gets left over and it gets mixed in with everything. And really the challenge is the clumpiness and that hay. And we need to be able to break that all up. So that's the problem, and we're going to be talking about that a lot, especially as spring gets here. But this question again from Texas Jerry: have you thought about using a mortar mixer to grind and mix prior to pumping? So a lot of you have sent mortar mixer in, and also plaster paper mache cement mixer, and those are really great videos that you sent and great ideas. The challenge that I have, so to answer your question straight up, no, I didn't think about those things, but having subscribers like you send me this stuff, I did go look it up. And what I've seen is that they're good for mixing, they're good for tumbling, but they're not good for shredding. So it's that hay, it's that fiber, it's that the cement mixer would help tumble and break up the manure, chunks, so that would be good. But it's that hay that's really going to be the problem. So we're going to need a shredder of some form, something that rips that hay, those fibrous things apart. And think of it like lettuce or orange rinds, stuff that you would normally throw away or shove down a garbage disposal. We want to shove that into our digester. So think of celery. That's probably a really great example, celery. A cement mixer won't break celery. It might break it into chunks, like quarter-sized chunks, just by the act of rolling. But we need to actually shred it and turn it into really small fibers so that it can get sucked up by the grinder pump, which will shred it even further. But that grinder pump inlet is like that big, and it has a grinder inside of it. So we need to get it pretty small and not have a whole bunch of fibers that can just get caught up in there, because that's what happens. It just gets plugged with fibers. So I don't think a mortar mixer is going to work, or the paper cement mixer, just because it's a mixer and not a shredder. Good question, though, and made me really think about it. Dom M. This might be a stupid question, but would a wood chipper break up the dry manure enough? And no, Dom, that's not a stupid question at all. The wood chipper is definitely more like the shredder. In fact, I think it has the exact same type of things inside of it, shredder teeth. It might be a hammer. There's hammer mills that have also been recommended. So the hammer mills and the chippers, I think, operate on the same premise, that they're kind of beating the thing down, and you're getting fairly large chunks still coming out. So a wood chipper without modification won't work, but if you look at some of the shredder ideas that have been sent in, if you put a screen around the outside, or around the outlet, so that the material comes back in and gets recut up until it's the right size to get through the screen, then it would work. So I think the idea of a wood chipper would probably do most of what we need, but not all. Again, shredding, think of it, shredding that celery up into small chunks. Like, it would get it into smaller chunks, don't get me wrong. I know it would destroy celery, but it's those little fibers that are really the problem, and we need to get them really ground up. So I think a custom-built shredder, there's a guy, the plastic guy, what was his name? It was sent in, and I wrote back, whoever sent that in, thank you, because I went and watched his videos. He made his own shredder, and I think that's what we're going to end up having to do, is creating a shredder. So on that note, some of you have said before that you would like to help out, and you have capabilities and stuff like that to help out. So CNC machining, laser cutting, water cutting, all those things, if any of you would like to actually help us build a custom shredder, it's going to have to be about 4 feet long with a hopper on it, I'm thinking, and I'll try to do a video just on the design thought of this, but I think it's going to be a 4 foot long shredder, so that it's about the size of my tractor bucket, with a hopper. So let me turn around. So if it's 4 foot long, now let's turn it on its end so that length is looking at you. We're going to need a hopper on the side that I could just dump the tractor bucket into, and then that hopper just feeds right down into this long shredder, and that shredder probably has an auger that goes right over into the horse toilet, and then that's filled with digestate from the digester, and then that's ground up by the pump and shot out to the digester. If we did that, I think we're money. But I'm not a machinist. Wrangler Star has me a leg up. I am more of an engineer than I am a machinist or a builder. So if anybody actually wants to help us build this, and by helping I mean get the metal, cut the metal, and send me all the parts, and then I put it together, and then we all do this together, shoot me an email at trm@TheRealMartian.com, and we'll make it happen, give you a call out. Let's talk about how we can get you credit and get you reimbursed for the work that you do. But I'm definitely not ashamed to ask for help on this one. Okay, sometimes I ask, how about a concrete mixer bucket that goes on front of the skid steers? This, again, is a digester question. Lots of good digester thoughts. I think we already talked about it. The concrete mixer that I saw that you sent me the link to was amazing. First of all, I would love to have had that thing for a whole bunch of different reasons, and I might end up trying to rent one this summer when we do Lane 1 and Lane 4 installations. That's awesome. But I think the same problem exists, is that it has the big auger at the bottom that mixes the cement, but not a shredder. So the shredding action is what we really need to have. So everybody think shredder, and now let's figure out the best way to make a shredder. Logan Will, what about a TIF mower or a snowblower? So same thing, Logan. The snowblower has the big auger-like unit inside of it that spins that snow, and then it has the back blade that throws it out, but it doesn't shred. So what would happen is the hay would get wrapped around this auger, and then it wouldn't actually shred it, which is what we need. So good question. Lane Vodka asks, was the pump that I showed, was it used? No, it wasn't used. It was brand new. I couldn't find a used one. So that was a brand new pump. It's going to work. We're going to make it work. It is a good pump, though. J. Claude, I think is what that is. Pretty neat system setup. I'm curious if the concrete in the digester is reinforced or was it blended concrete? That's a great question. I didn't know about blended concrete until this build, and the designs for the digester from Puxin, P-U-X-I-N, did not call for rebar. Now, it is all down on the ground, and you have the force of the dirt coming in as well as the force of the liquid going out. So it's a pretty good system without reinforcement. But that said, I did choose to go with the fiber reinforced concrete, which, according to the guy that I bought it from, is supposed to be just as strong as rebar. So we actually upped the game on that and did put in fiber reinforced. Dan Whiteford asks, is the loading problem just related to straw? The straw being used as bedding, or is it any long stem plant tissue, including hay, silage, is used as animal feed? So that's a great question, Dan. I think I touched on it a little bit earlier as well, but the idea here is anything that has fibers in it is the problem. So again, hay is a big problem because the animals eat, but then it drops down into their manure, and when I clean everything up, you still have hay in it. So some of you recommended, like, well, don't use straw as your bedding. It's still not going to solve the problem. What we need to be able to do is take anything that's fibrous. So again, lettuce, think of orange rinds, watermelon rinds, apple cores, celery, hay. What are some other good ones? I think those are kind of the big ones there. We want to be able to put all that stuff in the digester. In fact, the more vegetable scraps or table scraps that you put in, the more methane that's generated. That stuff's highly rich in material that will be digested down and turned into methane. So we really want that stuff. Good question. Rick Sizik, with the choice of fish, any reason you went with trout instead of carp? Was it a market decision? Were customers asking for it? Because carps are omnivorous and cold tolerant. They are also good to eat. This would also help with your desire to do algae-based feeding. Great question, Rick. So this one came down to looking at aquaponics of what people normally do, and then yes, it was a market-based decision. Tilapia is the most common base fish that we've seen used in aquaponics. However, they're usually used in warm climates, warmer than where we're at, and that means more heating that has to go with the water. In the wintertime, it would be a lot more heating for us. They want it up above the 60-degree mark, I believe. So that was an energy consumption challenge, but also just a food consumption. I think, really, do you want fresh tilapia or do you want fresh rainbow trout? Which one's going to make more money when you go to sell it? And we went with rainbow trout for our area. It's a better market for that. So also, I don't like tilapia. I like rainbow trout. So that was a big reason for it. Now, when we build HAB 2, it is a desire of ours that we solve the heating problem and can turn HAB 2 into what we call a warm building. And inside of HAB2, instead of rainbow trout, if we can figure out the heating, we would like to do giant freshwater prawns. And you can look those ones up. They like get that big. They're like mini freshwater lobster, basically. I think is actually another name for them. I would really like to do that because, again, tilapia just don't float my boat, but giant freshwater prawns do. And that would be a great market that we could sell here. Some people have done aquaponics on YouTube with shrimp in it, so you can do a Google search on that. I don't know if we're going to get there. Honestly, the heating problem in the summer, definitely solutions, but in the winter, the trout probably the better way to go. And maybe a crop rotation. Maybe in the summer we do shrimp, and in the winter we do trout, and that's just how it has to be. We'll find out. Good question. Sean Davies, does the methane need to be cleaned, or can you just use it or fill your car with it? So Sean is talking about the methane that comes off of the digester, and the fact that I said what I want to be able to do is, run a generator, produce heat, and then eventually put it into my truck, convert my truck over to run on natural gas. Methane is natural gas, essentially. And the question and answer there is, yes, it does need to be cleaned. You need to dehumidify it, and then you have to remove, I think it's sulfur oxide from it, by putting it through a scrubber, and that will clean the methane so it doesn't hurt your engine. Good question. Tracy Ulsterline asks, I imagine you'll add a compressor and dryer at some point before you fuel heaters in our vehicles. Also, what is the plan for summer? With the warm weather, would you be producing more than you can use as far as methane goes? So that's another great question, Tracy. And I think the answer there is yes, you absolutely have to have a compressor. brcfuelmaker.com has two compressors that we looked at. The fill unit, which PHIL, is kind of a great economical choice. But they have one right above it, I think FQ7 or something like that. It has a numerical designation. And that one is a more industrial grade, a little bit heavier duty, more like what we would need here. So we would definitely, like I just said, we would have to scrub it, dehumidify it, and remove the sulfur from it, and then we could pump it up. And all the piping is put in the ground here. The compressor unit would be in the barn where I park my truck, and then every night I'd come home and just plug the compressor in to the truck once it's converted and recharge it. Now, your next part, will we be producing more than what we can use? Right now, the numbers say no. We don't have enough head of livestock to actually produce more methane than what we could use. I do have a spreadsheet, kind of hard to share that, but that calculates how much we could produce based on the number of head of animal we have and the percentage of their manure that you could capture. It could produce a few hours worth of burn time, but not a lot. If we have more animals and another digester, which is what we want to do in HAB2, have another digester and maybe put two more digesters somewhere else. In the future, I would like to go after, instead of our septic tank, I would like to put in place a digester up there, but there's quite a bit of paperwork that has to be done and a lot of work there so that we could have multiple digesters going here off of multiple sources and eventually power everything with that methane. So good question. Burke Mobby asks, have you done a Perc chart? That's a P-E-R-T, that's an acronym, chart, and will you share it? And Burke, I saw your comment and it made me laugh. I went back to my time in the Air Force learning about program management, project management, and in college as well, and what I do every day. And Perc chart. No, I haven't put together a Perc chart. I do have a Microsoft project schedule, but really I've and for those that don't know, a Perc chart essentially shows the major milestones, the key tasks that have to be completed for a project, so you can visualize, are you being successful, are you making your way through all of this. And Burke, lately I've actually adopted more of the Agile philosophy, so I have vision statements, I have user stories, here's what I'd like to do, and then because I am fixed resources, fixed cost, I don't have a lot of money coming in, I can't just go get all the money that I need, and fixed time, basically, well, I have lots of time, but so not fixed time, but those the first two things are fixed, and it's just me, so basically it's, here's the vision, break those down into user stories, and then lay those into a backlog, and I get to it as I can and keep moving my way through. And the goal here is to keep a healthy backlog so I can see all the work that I need to do, and then I just, as money becomes available, I move things off the backlog and move them up and actually do them in sprint. So that's how we manage our projects here. And my last question from Hans Mortison. So, Stargate or Star Trek? That's a great question. And that's funny. It's actually made me think about it for quite some time. So let's see here. Star Trek, I obviously started on. It came first. So I watched the original series when I was much younger, little Jeff. And then I was excited when The Next Generation came out. I definitely associate with Captain Picard. I think that's a great captain example out of all the captains. I know there'll probably be a debate now on which captain is best, but I like Picard. I really enjoyed that series. I think the Borg were like the world's greatest bad guy. So that one made it fun to watch Star Trek. And what I really like about Star Trek, it has to be the ones with the actual Enterprise. I didn't like Deep Space Nine. And I think that's because it was a space station, it was stationary, and it was more of a drama than it was exploration. I like Star Trek Enterprise. I thought that was a nice little start there. They never really got a hold of the formula, though. They kind of went all over the place. Star Trek was good. Stargate, when that movie came out, I was blown away. I loved it. I loved the idea. And again, it got back to, it was the first sci-fi since The Next Generation that actually got back to that exploration, and let's tell a story with morality built in and questions that really are hard questions to answer. And I really love that about Stargate. I own the series. I think I would lean more towards Stargate. They had the Air Force going for it, which made it much more real for me because I was in the Air Force. I always joke, oh, let's go to Cheyenne Mountain, you know, I swear they got to have a door there that says Stargate, SG-1, you know, command. So I've heard rumors that is actually a joke that they have there, but I can't confirm that. So I think I'll lean towards Stargate. I enjoyed it. I would go back and watch all the Stargates over and over and over again as compared to Star Trek. There's a few of them I would choose to watch over, but Stargate I really quite enjoy. So I think I'll say I'm a Stargate fan. Okay, that's it for the questions and answers. Thanks everyone for following along. I hope you liked this video. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up, hit the subscribe button, and there's that little bell to the left if you want to get notified of any future videos that come out. Thanks everybody. This is The Real Martian. Out.